This is part 2 of the night they surprised me with that famous big red book.
This is not an illusion. I am here in the living flesh to say, David Berglas, president of the Magic Circle tonight, this is your life.
Rather unusual. Now, the reason for me being kept in that trailer for such a long time is because they had a surprise. The surprise was that they would take all the top table guests and a few other show business people and put them in the coach and come down to Teddington to surprise me. But unfortunately, somebody inadvertently had parked their car just in front of the coach, and the coach couldn't get out. So they had to go upstairs again and find whoever owned the car before that person came down, moved the car, then they could move the coach, and then they had to drive all the way to Teddington. So there was a long delay. And they tell me it was the latest This Is Your Life they ever did, because it didn't start until about 1 o'clock in the morning and finished about 4 o'clock in the morning with the reception. But I'm jumping ahead of myself, so let me tell you the sequence of events. When the music played and I walked out from the studio, I couldn't believe my eyes. To the left of me were all my top table guests and some other celebrities and members of the Grand Ole Opry, the well-known charity show business organization that I was very active in. They were sitting there, and on my right were many old friends and family. That was a big enough surprise. But remember, it was 1 o'clock in the morning, and when I looked up to the balcony, it was full of public, the audience. Whether they'd waited all that time or whether they were ushered in that moment, I don't know, but it was just an amazing sight for me to see. And of course, first I went up to my wife to greet her and give her a kiss and maybe tell her off for playing that surprise on me. Then my our three children came up to me, Peter, Marvin and Irina, giving me a hug, and my son Peter said how proud he was of what had happened, and they sat down, and then Michael Ashbrook started reading from the Red Book and said, well, here are the people who surprised you, the Pendragons. And they came out wearing their Magic Circle medals for the first time.
Well, again, thanks to you, but I know that you, Jonathan, and Charlotte have particular reason to be grateful to David.
Yes, thanks largely to David. The Magic Circle now admits women into its ranks, and he seconded Charlotte's membership.
And Jonathan and I have been honored with the membership into the exclusive Inner Magic Circle. And for any magician or illusionist, this is the greatest honor in magic, and for that we thank David Berglas.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Pendragon.
And the next guest was Paul Daniels.
We like you, Mr. President. Not a lot, but we like you.
No more clues required. It is Paul Daniels. Brother Paul, what is the special delivery?
Ah, yes, I've got that. But before that, I just want to say that when I was a boy, he was already old. And it's not true. But he had his own TV series, and he was the governor. He really was. And since that time, so much magic has come out of this man. He's respected all over the world for that. And this is a great night. I know what you feel like. It's a great feeling. And the special delivery is, because you left the Bloomsbury Crest very quickly, and you had so many guests on your top table, they asked me to bring you the bill. So if you could just pay that, I'd be very grateful. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Well done. Debbie is waiting. Nice to see you, Debbie, as well, of course.
When Paul went to sit down, we saw a glimpse of what he called the lovely Debbie McGee, his not only his sister but his wife. Ruth and I had been at their wedding, and we'd known them for a very long time, and it was lovely to see them there.
Also here from the banquet, of course, your wife Ruth and your sons Peter and Marvin and your daughter Irina. Now, in 1954, following a cabaret act in London, you were approached by a young amateur magician wanting to talk about your act, but you're more interested in the young lady on his arm. That's right, isn't it, Ruth?
Yes, that is right.
What happened?
Oh, well, I first heard David on the radio show, and every Sunday with my father. I listened to him, and I was fascinated. Not only what he did, but his voice. He had an uncanny, intriguing voice. And then when I did finally meet him, he was talking magic with this young man, and suddenly he turned to me and he said, I'm giving a party next week, would you like to come along? And my heart was beating because I had fallen in love with his voice, and here seeing this handsome, gorgeous man, and he still is, he still is, I said, yes, I will come to the party. And we went out for 2 years, and then finally we got married.
That was in 1956.
That's right.
And here you are at your wedding in London. Who was the four-legged friend there?
It was our dog. It was our dog, Tricky. And he was our best man, would you believe? Really?
He really was.
Signed the register as well?
He really was.
He had the ring round his neck.
Oh, lovely.
Yes.
Well, also in 1956, you performed for the first time your incredible stunt of driving through London blindfold, which happens on the M25 all the time now, of course. Your skills of prediction are put to the test in 1957 when you send to the editors of all national newspapers a sealed envelope giving the date, time of birth, and the sex of your first child. How did he do, Peter?
I arrived right on the dot. He got the date absolutely right, and in fact said that I would be a boy. I can vouch that was true. And actually I arrived very close to the minute that he actually predicted.
Well, you repeat the prediction with your second child a year and 2 weeks later. So, Marvin, have you followed your father in the business?
Well, actually, Peter and Irene and I, we all work together. We run a business called First Class, where we supply primary schools with design technology equipment. But because of Dad and my interest in magic, I run a side of the business called Marvin's Magic, where we demonstrate and sell easy-to-perform tricks in stores. And with Dad's help and advice, it's rather appropriate that we're encouraging the magicians of tomorrow.
Excellent. And completing your magic family circle, flown in from South Africa, your sister, Gaby.
And of course, they don't allow people to say what they want to say because they have to try and tell you a life story in a half an hour. So they actually script things so that each guest would say part of your life story. So that is a little bit annoying and rather confusing for everybody, but this is what happened. So when they said they'd flown my sister, of course I was thrilled to bits. We say hello, and she sits down, they ask her a question, and she was just going to say some more when they cut away from her.
Well, David Berglas, this is your life. Your first appearance is on July the 30th, 1926. Your father, Alfred, helps run the family textile business. Here's your mother, Emmy, and here you are with your parents, your elder sister, Ellen Ruth, and your younger sister, Gaby. Now, Gaby, your family always seemed to be on the move in the 1930s.
Yes, my father had factories all over Europe, and we tended to be educated in different countries and learned different languages.
And the family, of course, flees Nazi Germany and arriving in England in 1938. At school, your inquiring mind leads you to an interest in psychology.
David, even as a youngster at school at Frensham Heights, you were fascinated by tricks of the mind.
The same thing happened with a close friend of mine who was a well-known psychiatrist, a man called John Buckman.
Now a psychiatrist in America, we've flown in from the University of Virginia tonight, Dr. John Buckman.
Now, he went to the same school as me in Frensham Heights, a co-educational school in Surrey, and we had become very good friends, particularly after we left school. He was 2 years older than me. And we hung around together, and during his studies of psychiatry, he often took me along to either mental homes or hospitals, wherever he was studying, and I learned a lot of my psychology through him. And besides that, we were very close friends. He then moved to America and became an expert in the drug LSD. He even wrote a book on it, and he was considered one of the top experts. So if they had a court case involving LSD, they would fly him in to give evidence. That's how respected he was. And he had lots of anecdotes and stories about me, but they had given him the script. So when he came out, he said,
1939, Frensham Heights. The two of us, a number of others, were digging anti-tank ditches to stop Hitler driving into London. And we rested in the ditches and we looked at the skies. And sometimes there would be German planes going across. David's imagination was very rampant then. He wondered what it would be like to be in one of the Spitfires following the German planes.
Thank you very much. John Buckman.
But nothing to do with our relationship as friends and as a psychiatrist and psychotherapy. My brother-in-law, who was also in the audience, was a Spitfire pilot, my big hero. That's what I intended to do. So he talked about that.
Well, 1942, and you study psychotherapy, but your passion is still the war in the skies. Now, Mike Einhorn, you're married to Ellen Ruth, and you were a Spitfire pilot.
Yes, I was. And at that time, David was very keen to become one as well, so he tried to get into the Air Force desperately. And as a matter of fact, he did lie about his age in order to try and get him. Unfortunately, he got found out.
One of the few times.
Yeah.
Now, undeterred, you sign on with the United States Army in 1945. You're based here in... You look a real con man there, I must say. Now, you're based in Esslingen in Germany, and a former refugee who, like you, came to England, joins you in the intelligence unit.
Same thing happened with a man called Louis Goodman.
Louis Goodman, better known to you as Benny.
I think we did a rather more important job in tracking down a few Nazis and maybe stopping a little bit of werewolfing. And one way or another, I think we did a pretty good job with those telephone wires and those letter censoring devices. And you went on to Nuremberg after that, and I think you told a story there.
And I think some of those people were quite upset by being either thrown in or brought there to tell their story, and then said, no, you have to stick to the script.
Thank you, Louis Goodman.
There were one or two exceptions, like the well-known actor from Oliver, Ron Moody, came in, did a very funny performance, as you'll see.
Disney Productions, you were the special effects advisor on The Spaceman and King Arthur. Playing Merlin there is an old friend of yours.
You, David, are a real-life Merlin, a true wizard.
Yes, it is Ron Moody. Thank you very much. Ron, you've worked together a lot, haven't you?
Yes, many times.
Yeah. Well, thanks for coming.
I'm going to say something.
Well, why not?
Oh, yes. Whenever I have a job that requires magical special effects, I always say to the producer,
Send for Berglas. He can do anything.
I don't even ask for 10%, because I know I wouldn't get it. But he is a man of the most incredible gifts. When he can do tricks that make you really believe in magic. I mean, a year ago, he rang me up and said,
Ron, he said, are you free to speak at the Magic Circle on Friday?
I said, I'm terribly sorry, Paul, David. I'm terribly sorry. I'm very busy. So he said,
are you free to speak at the Magic Circle on Friday?
I said, well, I'm writing a book. He said, free, speak, Magic Circle, Friday. Free, speak, Magic Circle, speak, free, free. So there I was speaking at the Magic Circle on Friday for free. And I still don't know how I got there. What am I doing here? Who are all these people?
You land a job at the Windmill Theatre in 1953, and you share a dressing room with a young comedian.
But, David, there was one trick that even you failed to perform.
Comedian turned actor Bill Maynard.
We were doing 6 shows a day, if you remember, David. But I tell you something, he was a very hard act to follow. He really was.
And then the leader of the House of Commons, John McGregor, now Lord John McGregor, said some nice things, that they were given a free script.
Well, John, you and David have a lot in common, then.
Well, yes. My favourite branch of magic is mind reading, and it was David who first introduced me to it and enthused me about it when I was a young man in the 1950s, and I first read his writings. And even then, his genius shone through the written page. Then, much later, David welcomed me into the Magic Circle, and I discovered just how much he does for public and charitable work. And as I travel around the world, I can confirm what Paul Daniels said, that David's a splendid international ambassador of magic. David, I wish I had your degree of mind-reading powers. It would be very useful in answering questions in the House of Commons.
Thank you, John McGregor.
Thank you, John.
And then one of my big heroes, the magician Moretti, who was one of the most exciting performers in the world, from his home in Germany, said hello and introduced me to his baby granddaughter and so on.
About 25 years ago, I met David in his TV series called Opus 13. In his show, I have performed a sharpshooting act with guns. I was very impressed with David's personality and showmanship. For myself, is David the greatest mentalist in the world.
Thank you, Hans and Helga Moretti.
I could never have imagined who my last mystery guest would be. Join me in part 3 to find out.